War correspondence from the Doggerland front, today on Attention Span Labs. Hello and welcome to Attention Span Labs. I'm your host, Michael DiBaggio. Today we're going to take a look at the much heralded and much anticipated in some circles new war game from Osprey Games called A War Transformed, World War I on the Doggerland front. Now this is a folk horror, weird war game. Somewhat unusual, I guess, in that the weird war is set in World War I. Not completely unprecedented, but usually where it's a World War II or sometimes American Civil War kind of setting. The World War I Weird War is this particular one is a lot more focused on supernatural rather than strange technology. There's no mechs and so forth in this game, but it is a very interesting setting, and going with the folk horror themes that, for whatever reason, are somewhat popular now in tabletop wargaming. I like folk horror, though I was unfamiliar with the term as such until recently. But it's popular in some games like Verret Wood, and there are some other similar games that try and take in these tropes of sort of rustic, pastoral setting of ancient, forgotten gods and demons and monsters lurking around in the countryside, and the misery of the trench warfare in World War I, and also its correspondence in time with an outbreak of spiritualism, theosophy, and things like that from the fin de siècle in the 19th century to actually before that, probably starting it with some of the religious revivals in America from the 1840s, 50s on, makes for a uniquely fertile ground for this type of setting. So this book, I believe, is not, I just checked on Amazon, it's not actually scheduled to be released in the US until October 31st. I have it now. I'm not special. I ordered it from Britain. I ordered it from Nick Ayers' North Star military figures, by which I got a special deal. I got a discount on it, and even with shipping, it was a little more, but it got to me much sooner, and it came with a free sprue of Stargrave witches or wizards, which you can use as wizards in this game. It is intended to be 28mm, but I suppose there's no reason you couldn't play it in slightly larger or slightly smaller scales with minimal modifications to the rules. But we're going to look through it, you and I, and it is impossible to be brief with this book. I'll state up front, I have not read through the whole thing, and I've not played a game. So why am I giving a review? Well, it's not really a review, it's just sort of my first impressions on it. I don't know that I'll be able to play it anytime soon. I kind of want to take a jump on the reviews that will probably be swarming YouTube in the next few months as it picks up steam, assuming it does pick up steam. And there's, since I got it early, I wanted to give people who don't have it yet a look at it. I'll talk just rather than giving it like a firm up or down recommendation, since I don't feel I'm qualified at this point to do it, since I haven't played it. I'll talk about things I like, things I don't like, and try to bring out the high points, things that might have appeal to you, and other things that might be a concern to you. So I have to say that this is the crunchiest. By crunchy, I mean the rules are very complex. Not necessarily complicated, but it's complex. The difference being that it may not be unnecessarily so than what you're normally used to, especially what I'm used to, especially from Osprey games. Used to games like Gaslands or the Rampant series of games, or the Frostgrave, Stargrave line, which are fairly simple and pretty standard with not a whole lot of weird exceptions to the rules. This is very different, and I'll talk about some of that as we go on. So without further ado, let's take a look at A War Transformed. Okay, A War Transformed is written by Frederick Silburn-Slater, published by Osprey Games in 2023. It's 224 pages, including the templates at the back. I don't know what I should check, but I don't know what it actually is supposed to sell for. MSRP, I think it's like $35. I paid about 30 bucks for it for the pre-order. As I mentioned, it's extremely crunchy. So we're going to talk about. You can see there's a lot of headings in this table of contents. So just to give you a glimpse at what's inside, talk about general principles, some essential and optional items. It does use multiple kinds of dice. If I remember correctly, D3, D6, D4s, D10s. I don't know why it skips some others and doesn't use others, but covers the phases. There's a very unusual, I think, unusual order of play. It's not unprecedented by any means. This is it's an I go, you go, but within phases, sort of like the Star Wars miniatures battles, where the movement phase, you'd move your whole army, and the next guy move his whole army, and so forth. But there's activation, and there's a somewhat convoluted metagaming mechanic on top of that, where you try to gain the initiative, which we'll talk about when we get to that section. We'll do a flip through, so we'll see most of the stuff. There's a lot of particular rules about fire combat, terrain, extensive concern for cover, and different types of terrain for obstacles and so forth. There's a magic system, which I quite like. I'll tell you that ahead of time. And there's some basic unit lists for common, and then for particular factions. The factions laid out in the game are the French, the German Empire, and the Free Corps, which is a separate faction. The British Empire, the American Foreign Legion, American Volunteer Units, which are America is still neutral in this setting, and it even though it takes place in 1918, obviously history has changed. We'll talk about that in a bit, but they fight for all sides. Whoever they want to align with, and the Russian Empire. Quick note in the front of this book: it says players expecting an accurate simulation of First World War combat, or even those opposed to the occasional anachronism, will find themselves disappointed. So this is a fantasy game, obviously. It's Weird War, meant to appeal to that intersection of historicals and those who like a bit of fantasy. So the setting, basically, you probably know about this already if you know about the game, is during World War One. A large asteroid named Summerisle, obviously, metatextually, I think named after Lord Summerisle, played by Christopher Lee in the probably the most famous folk horror movie, The Wicker Man. But it crashed in the early stage of the war. It's hurtling towards the Earth, and instead of hitting Earth, it hits the moon, blows a chunk out of the moon. And this dramatically alters the landscape by changing the tides and stuff, but it also creates an awakening as the moon sort of descends and reactivates the old pagan gods. And the subtitle of this book, of War on the Doggerland Front, is a reference to the formerly above water area called Doggerland in the North Sea, just near on the other side of the English Channel, on the North Sea side of the English Channel, that in olden times in the Ice Age, when sea levels were much lower, was inhabited, and it connected Britain directly with Europe. So basically, after the initial trench lines were started and this happened, and the tides receded, and now there's a huge, largely open, muddy, miry ship and mammoth graveyard that stretches from the east coast of England to Denmark, and it's initially undefended, and so a lot of the war shifts there from the very tight maneuvering spaces in the Low Countries and in northern France along the English Channel. All right, so that's it in a nutshell. This event is called the Shattering, and like I said, it activates the. So I'll actually read that to you. Devastated by the cataclysm caused by Sumerile's impact, much of the world lies barren. Though nature reclaims the world with preternatural speed, nothing planted by human hands will grow. It is only the intercession of the ancient gods that feeds the world. Wherever they are appeased with sacrifice and worship, the earth gives up its bounty, but life must be bought with death. Chief among those old gods is the moon goddess herself. Her three aspects, the maiden, the mother, and the crone, are collectively known as the triune goddess. Her masculine counterpart, the horned god, is the master of wild places. A host of other smaller gods and nature spirits abound, and all exact a tribute of human souls to sustain them. Driven to a frenzy akin to madness by both the wounding of the moon and the desecration of nature caused by the war, they command a far greater tithe in blood than seen in past ages. But the tale grows stranger still. The shattering provided new opportunities to prosecute the war. As the ground shook and the waters receded, the ancient crowd that once connected the British Isles with mainland Europe, Doggerland, was revealed once more by the ebbing tide. Lost for 8,000 years beneath the roiling North Sea, this new and vast frontier, stretching from the Isle of Wight to Jutland, now lies open and unguarded. An army can now march from London to Berlin dry-shod. The trenches of the Western Front stretch far across what was once the bed of the sea, littered with the wrecks of ships and the detritus long thought lost forever under the dark waves. So as you can see, this is a very grim, dark setting. So let me talk about what is, for me, the elephant in the room right away. It is very explicitly pagan. I have not found a single mention of Christianity in it. It is as if it has just gone away. All the modern religions, and it's not explicitly, so there's sort of a hint that America still is Christian, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But it is explicitly pagan. It's that the pagan gods must be satiated by blood sacrifices, particularly of humans, and that's why much of the war goes on. Otherwise, you starve to death. So it very much establishes the sort of, I don't know if it does not explicitly say like that Christianity is false religion or whatever, but that it doesn't mention it all, and everybody's pagan or they die. So if that, obviously I don't like that. It sort of skips over the idea that Christianity and even other religions like Islam had anything to do with the elimination of paganism, which in fact they did. People gave up paganism en masse in real life, and they it just sort of looks at science and rationalism, but of course that's a modernist sentiment that the Enlightenment is only from the late 1600s, and ignores the 1600 years of spiritual moral transformation that occurred primarily because of Christianity that destroyed the pagan world, and it doesn't mention that here. But I with saying I don't like it, I mean, if I play this game in that setting, obviously I'm going to not follow that to a T, and it's your game, so you're going to do it however you want. But I understand what they're trying to make a very grim, dark game. It's very it's grim, dark in a way that actually more than Warhammer 40K used to be, or fantasy battles used to be, because it's not meant to be funny, whereas they definitely were kind of a tongue-in-cheek presentation. But so that's a problem. The other thing that I'll bring about, I'll flip ahead a bit in that I think is a problem potentially. It says in the non-essential items, it talks about tarot cards. You don't need them, but the rituals are actually associated with certain tarot cards, and it's not using them for divination, but it does say that note that prior knowledge of the tarot is not required, and that these cards function purely as a memory aid. However, if you do have knowledge of the tarot, you can consult the cards before a match to see if the spirit world has any tips on securing victory. Okay, so I'm going to go right out and say that you should not do that. I have tarot cards, and they're fine as you can play games with them. You should not try to divine with them. There are two reasons you should not try to do any kind of divination or any Ouija board stuff with the spirit world. One is that it's really lame and pathetic, and that it's just you're making stuff up, and most of the time you're just my old girlfriend from college, her mom was in this Wiccan coven, and I was an atheist at the time, but so I thought it was really funny and ridiculous. But she used to do tarot readings. This is quite a digression, I know. I'm sorry, but people said they like my digression, so. but it's like really lame, and that's something that like middle-aged menopausal women with heat flashes do, and it's lame. So you don't want to do that. The worst problem is that if you actually do try to do it for divination, you're engaging in a sin, and that you a small percentage of the time can actually attract the attention of let's say demons, because that's what they are. And by doing that, you invite them into your life, and by showing your willingness to consult with them, they can sometimes offer you, they can seduce you, basically. And it can be a very scary thing for a lot of people. You don't need to hear that from me. You can see people that have had to go through exorcisms and so forth because of it, and I've seen the demonic influence in their life. And a lot of times it's not like exorcist movie stuff most times, but it's it can definitely be the sort of thing that through the random thing of the card, the random draw of the cards, and that's all it is. It's pure randomness. It doesn't mean anything, but they can seduce you into believing stuff and acting in irrational and stupid ways, mindless, anti-human ways, into doing bad things. So I recommend that you don't do that. So whether you purchase this game or not is going to be highly dependent on your feelings about that stuff. And I say, if you are, how St. Paul says, food sacrificed to idols doesn't mean anything, but like, so you can eat it, but if it causes a stumbling block to your weaker brethren, don't do it in front of them. So I would be careful that, especially if you have children around the house, and maybe omit some of these parts, change it a bit. But okay, so that's my big warning up front. That's the most important warning. I do have another warning related to the gameplay, which we'll talk about in a bit. But that said, you need dice, you need counters and so forth, and there's some guidelines on things like that. But just briefly talk about, give my impressions, the aesthetic impressions of the book. It looks like your standard Osprey book. It looks nice. It's formatted. The text is nice. It's easy to read. There are, hopefully I can find some here, there's a lot of nice pictures of the sort of Osprey digitally painted, farmed out to Malaysian artists standard. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that they're very good. They're in all their Osprey books, or their word game books, or historical books, and increasingly they're not handpicked, but they're good. They're evocative of the setting. They're somewhat impressionistic. Let's see if we can find something else here. They're real. They're not just generic. They paid for these. In other words, they're relevant to the setting. So it's nice. It's well formatted. It's at the back. There are scenarios. There are templates that you can photocopy for blast and so forth. There's the table of contents you already saw. There's not a good index. Sorry, I hit the camera. There's not a good index, but the binding is nice. Hold together. There's no bookmarks or whatever, but you can do that here. There's no ribbons like there is in some other Osprey books, but it's nice. It's a nice aesthetic presentation. On the other hand, a very serious flaw in its aesthetic presentation for a miniature war game. Can you guess what I'm about to say? Despite all these illustrations, there's not a single photograph of miniatures on the table. And there are World War I miniatures out there. There may not be miniatures for this game available yet, but unlike other games, like Doomed, for which there's no miniature, which I'll also do a video on. I really like Doomed. A lot of heavy modification went into it by miniature modification, doing custom work and so forth by the authors, and beautiful photographs all over the book. If you look at the other Osprey books like Gaslands or Xenos Rampant, where they even went into other companies to get photos. The bolt action books, which I know are done by Warlord, but they're still published by Osprey. But they have lots of great photos of miniatures, and I think to really capture your imagination, really set the tone, that a miniature wargame rulebook needs, especially for something that is unusual, not your normal fare. This is not a generic set of World War I rules. It needs pictures of that, and there are zero. There are none. So I think that is a big strike against it. I don't know why they didn't have someone to convert some minis, or just take pictures of many existing 28mm or World War I miniature lines. So, all right, with the aesthetics and the moral spiritual warnings aside, we're going to take a look at the rules next. Okay, so I want to reiterate that I haven't actually played this game, so all my commentary on it has to be necessarily speculative, but it's an informed speculation based on the my experience as, wargaming for 25 years, and I intend to just tell you how it works and not like put too much opinion in it, but where I think there is something I need to speak out on, I won't hesitate. So as I said, the rules are extremely crunchy for an Osprey game, although the units only basically have a few characteristics. They have pace, which is how far they can move. Double that pace is their charge. Very simple. There's no exceptions for that, I don't think. Martial skill, instead of being a number, is low, medium, high. And that basically determines the number at which the D6 roll at which they will hit a target on, absent other modifiers. Generally, covering the game affects your saving throw, but if you're sufficiently if you have sufficient enough blocking, but you're not entirely out of line of sight, it makes it a difficult shot that can only ever hit on a 1. No matter what your martial skill. But generally, low with your basic rifle weapons, your single shot weapons, obviously machine guns and artillery, they hit better, hit more often. But with things of fire, with a low volume of fire, like rifles, bolt action rifles, which people are mainly going to have at this point in time, is that if they're low martial skill, they're only going to hit on a 1 or 2. Everything else is a miss. On a medium, they hit on a 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 3, and then on a high, they hit on a 1 to maybe they hit on 1 to 4. On a high, they hit on a 1 to 4, or a 2 to 4. But on a 1, it's a critical hit, which is an instant kill basically that doesn't allow a saving throw. The zeal is a measure of their morale, resolve, will to fight. They have a number of wounds and a number of models. So the basically most units can take 1 wound, but certain units can take more. So the number of models in a unit basically is equivalent to their wound, and their saving throw. And as in this game, rolling low is better, as I mentioned. If you so the lower like your saving throw is, so you want to roll under that basically. So the higher that is, the better. All right. So it's already a little bit different there. It's not entirely unprecedented, but rolling low is unusual. There's advantage and disadvantage, which is basically advantage means if you have advantage 1, it means you subtract 1 from your roll, because again, rolling lower is better. If it's a disadvantage 1, you would add 1 to the roll. Okay, but some things give you advantage, disadvantage. Cover. This is it's not quite as much as I said it was in some conversations, but there's like 2 pages or a page and a half full of cover stuff, and it's interesting that it actually makes sense. So, but it's presented a little weirdly that made it difficult for me to understand at first. But anything that is an obstacle that's at least that's over half an inch in height, but it doesn't completely cover the soldier, is considered as makeshift cover that gives them an advantage to their saving throw. Basically, stuff's going to bench out. So it has to be a solid terrain object. I guess that doesn't doesn't mean like trees or so forth, which I guess only impose or bushes that only impose that kind of difficult shot roll. So a unit with enhanced cover is something that you've actually dug out yourself, I guess, like a foxhole. And so it gives you the benefits of, so it's a stacking thing. Enhanced cover gives you the benefits of makeshift cover, so it gives you an advantage 1. But it also means that if you're in a foxhole, you can't be critically hit. Okay? And then there's a third kind of cover which basically applies just to, there's a diagram for it here, which just applies to trenches. So it has all the advantages of the previous 2 kinds of cover. So you get the advantage 1, immunity from critical hits, and that allows you to, if you're to re-roll a saving throw against shooting attacks. So I guess you get one re-roll. Now it says here that basically only units with the not basically, explicitly, only units with the keyword infantry receive the benefits of cover, which I think is a little weird, maybe an oversight. I mean, why can't entrenched artillery receive the benefits of cover? Because the cover already doesn't work against indirect fire weapons like mortars and artillery shells, because they're lobbed grenades, something with an arc, because they'll land in they can land behind cover. But why don't entrenched artillery? Why can't a Renault FT tank fire hull down? Probably wasn't a lot of that going on in World War One, but it seems like an oversight. Why it should only be infantry, or like why not cavalry? If cavalry's in a trench waiting for a charge, why maybe they wouldn't be mounted. Okay, but why would they not get benefits from that cover? So I would play it so that they get the benefit from the cover if it's reasonable. So that, though, I think this is good. This is a good presentation. That's very thematically good. When mechanics are good, they emphasize the themes of the game, the setting, the genre. That's why sometimes a generic rule set does not satisfy the same way like a custom tailored one, because you want, like, this is World War One, so you want to emphasize trench warfare. You want to emphasize that stuff of the static defensive lines, the artillery barrages, and so forth. And that is a very good thematic rule for that. So I approve of that. The other test that you can take when under fire, or various other circumstances, is a battle shock test, and it's a test against your zeal. So you want to roll above your zeal characteristic, or below it rather, I guess. No, above it, because the lower scores are better, I think. If I'm getting that right, yeah. So rolling low is good, as I said. So I'm not actually sure about the balance of the units, which one's higher. Whether the, I assume then that the better units will have higher scores there. But that is a test that you don't always take it when you're under fire, but under certain circumstances, it's something that it says for every point that the test is failed by, the unit either loses a model or loses a wound. So by that means that a squad is going to lose. If you fail it by 2 points, you're going to lose 2 models from your squad. If it's a single unique creature with multiple wounds, going to lose 2 wounds. And there's no saving throws for that, unlike direct fire. Combat stress is interesting. You can have up to 3 markers of what they call CSMs, combat stress markers. They are basically it gives you a disadvantage. For each one you have, you can have a minimum of 3, but for every one over 3 you get, you have to take one of these battle shock tests, as I just mentioned. Now the difference is that unique units, vehicles, so special characters, creatures, your captain, your witch, or whatever, the monsters that can be summoned in the game, they actually have different things happen to them instead of just getting the disadvantage. You can see an example here at 1 combat stress modifier. It's lamed, so you reduce the pace to 3. And 2 combat stress markers, they're trembling, and so shooting attacks are taken at a low martial score, so they're only going to hit on 1 or 2. On 3 combat stress modifiers, they're shaken, and the aura effect of their power. And this is a hypothetical case. They're reduced by 5 inches. So the caveat there is that not all of them are going to be bad. In this case, all of them are bad, but some of them, like some of the monsters I looked at, like the first 2 are bad, but then when they get to 3, like they kind of throws off their shackles, and they are maybe less effective because they can be commanded, but they go on rampages and they kind of go wild. The combat stress is also gained by doing multiple activations in a round. We're going to talk about that in a minute, because that I think is the part of the game where I really had to raise my eyebrow, because this is one of the only games I've ever seen where there is an actual, not just terminology usage distinction, but there's a real game distinction between a phase, a round, and a turn. So let's move along to that, because this is an I go, you go system, but you go, I go, you go in the different phases. Now, this is a phase. It consists of, a round consists of all these phases here. If you're already going, then yeah, I agree with you. So the regular units, so basically your line units, your infantry, your cavalry, your tanks, your artillery, whatever's not a special character, whatever's not unique that you can only have one of, can activate once in their particular phase. So the cannonade phase, your artillery is going to activate, your mortars and so forth. The elite phase will be like your stormtroopers, whatever, your scouts. Your line phase is going to be you're going to activate last with your infantry units, or your cavalry, whatever they are, whatever's. So you wait in that order. The command phase, but they can only go there. But your unique units can activate more than once in a round, but only once per phase, up to a maximum of 3 times per round. So your lieutenant or whatever, they can give orders and so forth. But it gets, what's an activation? We'll get to that in a minute. But the command phase is the start. So you can manifest creatures, you can perform rituals, or issue orders. It says units that use a skill in this phase, such as issuing orders or performing ritual, don't count as having been activated. Okay, so that means you can still activate them 1, 2, 3. Okay. But presumably that means other things you do there, such as manifest creatures or whatever else that could be done in the combat phase, I'm sure that's not a full description, actually do count as an activation, and then you could only do it in 2 more of these phases. So I said maximum of 3 per round. But the other thing is that when that unique unit does more than the one thing per round, for every additional thing they do, they get a combat stress marker. Because it's combat stress, they're trying to do a lot. So let's break this down. Command phase, I explained that is sub-phase of that. 1A is the close combat sub-phase, basically where you resolve melee combat, close-in stuff, bayonet charges and so forth. The second part of that is compulsory moves. Compulsory moves are what they are in most games. They're things like if a unit's routed, broken, they're going to retreat, or run to cover, or whatever is necessary. If there's like an impetuous unit that's out of control, you have a monster that's out of control or something like that, it's going to move in there. But in this game, there's also going to be things like if a unit's under mind control, and you give them some sort of direction, or a ritual effect has on them that they're like transported. That's when they'll move, and then the other phases take place. All right, so that's a bit much maybe, because it's kind of like alternating activation, but it's I go you go within phases. But the phases are a little bit, most things you can't activate more than once, but certain things you can. But there's a penalty for it, and that part is fine. The part of this that really bugs me is that there's a metagame on top of this. That at the beginning of every phase, let me just read it to you. Players compete to act first in each phase, potentially gaining the upper hand or scuppering their opponent's carefully laid plans. How this bidding mechanic works is covered in more detail later. So we're going to talk about that in a second. But each phase, not each round, but each phase. And a turn is just someone giving their orders to the person, to the unit in question. So each phase, so for the command phase, but presumably not for the close combat subphase or compulsory move subphase, but for that whole one phase, you bid on it. Basically, you roll a die for initiative. Whoever gets the lowest goes first. However, this is complicated by you can bid on you can spend your command points to get extra die, and then you take the best roll. So there's this like action or I don't even know what to call it, but it's a meta game on top of it, and happens for each phase. So there's a lot of complaints in role-playing games about roll initiative for each member of the party and so forth. But now you're rolling initiative for 4 phases in a turn, each person, each opponent, and potentially complicating it by spending command points and so forth. And that's a lot going on. I don't really like that. Having not played it, I don't like that extra bit of cruft on top where you have to think about this extra stuff and kind of economize your command point. I don't like the idea of command points in general. And the big reason I don't like it is I don't know what it's supposed to represent in the real world. I think, if there's a rule for shooting, it represents a guy pulling a trigger or pressing a button or something like that and targeting an enemy and blowing them up. And if there's a saving throw, it represents their ability to take cover or how good their armor is and stuff. But I don't know what, that this modern tournament style, command point crap stuff that happens in Warhammer is, I think, a really bad example of it, a particularly pernicious example of it. But this stuff, what does it represent? It's not like you're better. You have a strategy rating or something like that, where a better commander gets more command points. No, the command points are generated down here based on how many forces you have left that have not been broken or destroyed, and if your captain's still in place. Plus, you can take other units that will generate command tokens for you. I don't like that. I'll say right now, I don't think I'll ever like it. I may be surprised by it. It does warn against, spending all your command tokens to get extra dice to go first, because you also use command tokens to use some special abilities for your unique units. So that's too much extra overhead, too much extra complexity. I don't know what it represents in the battlefield. I don't know what it represents in the real world. If it was something like, well, it's the favor of the gods and so forth that you're allied with, or the Gestalt, the Zeitgeist behind you or whatever, the Elan of your forces, then it should depend more on your force rather than, spending an actual quantity of points. So there you go. Now, when a unit is activated, there's special actions they can do. That would be that's about rest, charge, and normal activation, which includes a move, which is basically an ability. If they have a particular skill they can do, or they can shoot. Now, only models that are equipped with a weapon with the keyword quickfire may move and shoot. So that's another. Generally, they can, but sometimes they can't. But there's an exception to the rule, and it's this tag, this quickfire tag. Okay. But if they move and shoot, they have to move first. And I say, why? I don't like that roam bolt action either. I don't like that on an advance you have to move first, then shoot. Why? Why can't you lay down covering fire before you advance? Very basic thing, and especially if you're trying to to clear a trench or something like that. But all right, there's another. This is so complex; it keeps going on and on about what are the what's the order of the turns. Oh, and if you look up here, there are certain special rules that allow you to activate things out of their normal order. So there's that's a continuing theme in this game. Well, there's some nice art, by the way, of a mammoth graveyard in the Doggerland. Also, there's looks like a military knight with a 3-bar cross, and that's the first visual indication of their Christian presence here. But marching with some weird pagan totem guys. Yeah, so but as I was saying, the common feature of this game is that there's rules and that there's exceptions to just about every rule. In movement, let's talk about the facing. There is facing in this game, but basically only for vehicles and certain powerful units, I guess, like creatures. I don't know exactly what. So that's good. Not good is that facing doesn't matter for infantry, as if they can just pivot on a dime. So there's no such thing as like flanking fire. There's no enfilade or so forth, or being, hurt by being shot in the back or so forth. Quite a bit of rules about covering multiple, moving in and around obstacles, moving through in buildings. Unit cohesion is different than you expect. So they have to be within 1 inch of each other. I think there's an illustration of that there. Yeah, so they have to be within 1 inch of each other to be in when each individual member of a unit has to be within 1 inch of another one, but they all have to be within 6 inches of every other one, right? So you can't really spread them out in a line. There's all kinds of rules about making way and moving around obstacles, going through avoid how to team up on units in close combat, and you have to make way to get charges are straight line affairs. There's another nice image, wrecked biplane there. Looks like it's a red one. So, but they wrote the Kampflieger. Crash dead there. Anyway, all kinds of rules. Here's the compulsory moves there. The order of compulsory moves. The player who had priority activation in the command phase takes their first turn, and they can move them in any order, but they just have to make them, I guess. So broken units, things that have to move around, scatter from friendly units, mindless creatures, and so forth. Oops, I have up too close to the camera. Close combat. The number of dice in the combat is generated partly by zeal, but also partly because have the strength of the unit, which is pretty cool. I don't know how well that actually works, but it makes sense to me. Moving ahead now, about what it means to take wounds, and then so your low, medium, high martial skills too. So in close combat, it's not exactly the same because there's different tables, but there are so there must be some differences between the close combat rolls and the shooting rolls. But generally, 1 to 2 for low martial skills a hit, 1 to 3 is a hit for medium, 1 to 4 is a hit, and there's no critical hits except for critical hits on the table there, but there's critical hits if you have a special tag. So that's going to be hard to remember because there's critical hits for some, because you're not going to be, let's be realistic here. When you're playing this game, you're not going to be flipping back and forth all the time. So you're going to start thinking, oh, well, I normally get, my high martial value unit normally gets a critical hit on a 1 when shooting, but only, if I have a special keyword, do I get it in close combat. All right. Move ahead, there's, I mentioned basically how the shooting works before. Height matters in the game, basically to see around obstacles. Facing mainly matters for vehicles. There's a weapon priority. There's a lot of stuff to remember. So, I'm not saying that this is bad. I like crunchy games. Here's the stuff about the difficult shots. That's the one where you actually only hit on a 1, right? And that's separate from the saving throw. So that's basically both a concealment and cover distinction, which is fine. But anyway, I like crunchy games, but sometimes I don't like. I think not necessarily that there's a lot of weird. There's a lot of complex stuff here. It's not necessarily weird. I take that back, but it's. I'm skeptical of some of it, and I have to agree with a comment that on my first read through of it, with a commenter on our Gilded server who said that. It seems like a lot of it is different just to be different, and that's not necessarily a good thing. But it may play very well. There's the shooting tables I mentioned. So you get that critical hit on high martial skill. But a general, like on a rapid fire one, it's only 1 to 2 is a hit. So why is that? No matter what you are, okay, that's a little weird. Sorry, rapid fire is not a weapon type. It must be like a particular action you can do. Close quarters, you're better off. Machine gun can do hits and near miss. I guess that involves pinning. So And right here we are. The near misses do generate pins. If you're pinned, you can't do anything. You can't even rest. But cumulative near misses, I guess that don't necessarily cause a pin to add cumulative modifiers. So a pin in this game, you can't rally from a pin either. Apparently, it just lasts until the next round, which is. So I have that right round, yes, until the next round, which makes it extremely effective. But I guess that's balanced by that there's only machine guns, and I guess near misses from artillery can cause a pin. Weapons that are marked as devastating, in addition to causing whatever damage they take, including pins, they can also add combat stress markers and so forth. So. Tables for criticals for high explosives. Scattering. Oh, this game does use scatter dice, which is nice. It actually mentions scatter dice in particular with the arrows, of course. If you play old versions, if you have played old versions of Warhammer, you have plenty of scatter dice. But it gives alternate methods of figuring out where the orientation of a shot scatters, but. There are tables that specify the areas that are hit and the effects of a hit on armored vehicles, armored cars, tanks, and so forth. All right, so that's there's some bit of concern over ascertaining: is this a wood? Is this a locus? Is this a mire? And so forth. Are these, so that stuff does matter. There's all kinds of rules for what can enter the territory, which is pretty standard. So that's about it for the basic rules. And I'll say that there's a lot more to it than the basic stuff with rifles and mortars stuff, obviously, because there's magic and creature manifestations and so forth. But I'll say again, I like crunchy rule sets. But when you get into something that has a lot of exceptions to exceptions and it does things differently, my recommendation for an author of a book like this is to format it so that there's the basic game and the stuff where you don't get into the exceptions too much, and show a basic game is played, and then you have the advanced section, like the Star Wars Miniature Battles game we looked at before. Did that. A lot of role-playing games used to do that. To get you get the full experience. The expectations that you'll still play the advanced game, but it helps to sort of warm up into it. So maybe I'll be surprised if I play this game by the rules as written. I will have to no doubt reference this manual a lot, and it'll take a while to go through it. You're going to have to play this game several times before you get it down. That's my expectation. All right. So now special abilities, including rituals, orders, and manifestations. This is the real Weird War stuff. We mentioned before about the pagan aspect of everything, the triune goddess and the horn goddess. So your witch is going to be aligned with one of those, one of the three aspects, either the maiden, the mother of the crone, or the horn god. And this is where we talked about also about how they use you can use the tarot cards, represent them as a reminder of which one you have. And your spells, rituals they call them, and they can't be done in close combat. They can't be done if you're pinned or anything like that. They require gestures, pretty standard magic stuff. But their effects and what spells you have available to you depends on your allegiance, and you don't have, you can't cross over for the most part, I guess. These spells are really good. I like them. They're generally subtle. They're not usually they're not things like casting fireballs and stuff across the battlefield. Like they're not D&D kind of spells. Like for instance and they're very thematic. So the maiden grants her followers unrivaled speed and attacking potential, and their balance in terms of cost and will be most appealing to players in aggressive playstyles. So like the chariot, you can select a friendly vehicle to receive D3. You roll a D3, and that's extra pace for the movement of the round, so you can move a little bit faster. The Hanged Man, you can pick a unit that's not engaged in close combat, make it take a zeal test. If it's failed, remove model immediately. And for every model removed, a friendly unit within 20 inches of that unit may immediately be moved 6 inches in any direction. So you're basically like killing people on the other side and like throwing their energy into your unit. The Fool, select a unit within 12 inches of your witch for the remainder of the round. That unit gains the keyword foolhardy, more reckless. It'll pass more tests and so forth. You can slow things down. You can activate tracked vehicles in a different phase other than normal. You can remove combat stress markers and so forth. And the Mother is more associated with healing. You can remove combat stress markers, re-roll saving throws. Temperance is an interesting one. You can select 2 infantry or cavalry units within 12 inches of one another. Now, they don't have to be yours. That rule is written. For the remainder of the round, any wound inflicted on the first can be transferred to the second on a roll of 3 or less than a d6. So you have to make the roll individually for each wound and saving throws from the model that would be inflicted. So that would be a good spell to cast on, a unit before it goes into an enemy unit before it goes into fire combat. So they start exchanging fire with your unit. They're actually going to wound themselves. That's I really like that kind of thing. That's the kind of more thoughtful application of spells other than lightning balls and fireballs and stuff like that. Which it's fine, but this has more the flair of what was considered real magic, where you don't just get something for free. Like if you take speed off of to give to one unit, you're taking life from another, or you're exchanging. A lot of the ones that involve like changing the places of units on the battlefield. You're swapping them. Someone can raise the dead potentially, and for judgment, this is a ritual of the crone. A multi-model unit within 25 inches that has suffered losses in the previous round, roll a d6, and if you get a 1, the target is returned its full starting strength and gains a special rule terrifying for the remainder of the game. On the other hand, it could go badly, and all units within 10 inches, including the target unit, must take a battle shock test. So they're generally more subtle. There is a give and take to it. You don't get anything for free. However, powers generally don't work. Your witches can't generally do stuff. There's some for the Horn God. This is a lot of things too. This is about like attacking power and strength. You'll gain freakish strength or get the mighty blow keyword, and you can select a single piece of terrain such as a building or wood within 25 inches, and the remainder of the game you get bonuses if you're in there and so forth. Then you can manifest monsters. There's like small snatchers. These are your goblins and so forth. Haunters are your ghosts, your revenants. Undines and Rusalkas, and they have special effects. This is what I was talking about earlier, where they have combat stress markers. Different things can happen. They generally lose their ability. But on the Haunter, right, so it gets weaker in the first 2, but in 3, it actually gains an additional 2 attack dice as it goes into a frenzy. This is cool. I like this kind of magic. Prowlers would be, your black dogs. Black Shuck gives example. Beast of Gévaudan, things like that. Devourers are, your not your gnomes, your gnolls and your ghouls, things that eat the dead, up to the Crusher, which is a titan, which is a manifestation of these pagan gods walking around, giants and ogres and so forth. And there's rules for where they manifest. What I was saying before about so that there's the curse of iron, basically, which is that that if you're I think within 6 inches or it's some kind of aura of the tank, there's too much iron and it dissipates the magic. It dissipates supernatural effects. So I think you can't cast spells at all if you're a witch in those circumstances. Potentially, I also like magic that doesn't always work right all the time. So there's a lot of that in here. You have to test to make a manifestation, and if you roll certain, like if you pairs or 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind, 5 of a kind, 6 of a kind, really weird things happen. Some things generally don't go your way, so it's dangerous. I like that. So about mindless creatures and controlling them, how you can lose control of them. They go on rampage, they can attack you. There is rules for poison gas in this. Again, I don't know what a World War I game would be. If a World War I game that didn't have rules for poison gas would be really missing something. Most miniature games don't cover that. But this tells you a gas barrage is not something you basically can. It's an order you can give, so it's from off-table fire. And you can get smoke screens, or you can send out infiltrators. You can place mines. You could, so forth. But those are. So those get like the gas barrage and so forth, infiltrators. There are special orders you can give out, but only in the very first command phase, so in the first turn, round of the game. Other things you can give repeatedly. They cost command tokens, and there's faction-specific orders too. Vehicles, as I said, have facing. Their fire arcs matter, which is good. I like that. I like that very much more than current editions of say, that Games Workshop game. Obviously, if a gun has a turret, it's different. There's limitations on their pivot and how far they can go, which is also good. Especially as these vehicles are sort of rudimentary. They're only getting the idea. There's the curse of iron that I mentioned. If it's within 6 inches of a vehicle, they can't perform a ritual. And also, creatures cannot move when it's within 6 inches of a vehicle, including as part of a charge, unless they pass a zeal test. If the test is failed, they become pinned. Creatures that are rampaging, however, are no longer subject to the curse of iron. Destroyed vehicles, like in bolt action, as appropriate, they remain as cover on the table. A lot of tags in this game. Go into what they mean. And there's a lot to remember. Like I said, you're going to have to play this game many times before you get it down. So then there's this, chapter 8 is how you create your patrols, as they're called. So this is called a skirmish game, but it's rather larger than the skirmish game. That I think it's not a warband game at all. It's more. It's at 30-50 miniatures per side, which makes sense. Again, World War I, there's mostly mass infantry combat, and you're going to have some unique units. You can have a captain, which your factions you can trade out a captain or a lieutenant for somebody else. Then you have your infantry, cavalry, your vehicles, and creatures that you can either. I guess you can have some of them in the start of the game where you have to manifest them in the game. You select your faction, of course, and the Hermetic Lodge that your witch is associated with. There's basic rough force structure. There is a point section, selection points system in this. But generally, you can. The more selection points you have, the more special units you can have, more uniques, more cannonades, and so forth. Artillery units. But also, there's again exceptions to exceptions. There's some units are just limited in general. This is neat. Your leader, your captain, has a zodiac sign. These other, and they give. It's not all benefit. And my wife just shouted up that my daughter is ready to take a nap. So I guess that means I have to pause this video here. to ensure that she gets to sleep. But I'll be back in a little bit. But let me just finish this quick. You can choose the zodiac sign associated with your captain, and they have some benefits to them, and potentially some drawbacks as well. They can be mounted not just on horses, but on kelpies, water horses. A guy trash, I don't know what that is. Oh, a nightmare beast or a unicorn. There's another illustration. And now we're getting into the your common units, and then there are special ones for each. There's flamethrowers, there's snipers and lancers and colonial assault troops, light machine gun crews, rifle grenadiers, bombers, sappers. There's a lot. There's a lot of good units into different categories: mortars, artillery, towed artillery. There's some mindless units. The harrowed. It says, with the rise of magic, such terrors exist on the front that even seasoned veterans turn their backs and flee. These men do not lack for courage, but they suffer from one fatal human flaw, the instinct for self-preservation. However, the strange forces unleashed after the shattering meant that a variety of methods now exist for creating soldiers devoid of the troublesome desire to continue living. So they're basically zombies. Now there's specific units for each faction. The French have the Renault FT tank, the Ossifists. And they have special rule, astral projection, so that each faction has their own special kind of witch, shall we say, what they call is the category of a witch, and they have some different benefits. Germans have mesmerists. British have May Queens and spiritualists. Table knockers. Americans have millenarian preachers, which I said was the one mention that seemed to suggest that they're treating Christianity as sort of as a magic sorceress thing too. Yep, so lay on of hands, select a friendly unit of Covenanters within 6 inches, which has taken casualties and surrounded if successfully cast. Roll a d10, returning any model on a roll of 1. That costs the command token. With a Rite of Serpents, so snake handlers. Select a unit of Covenanters within 10 inches. Any unit, friend or foe, and including a select of Covenanters that is within 3 inches, takes 4 martial skill low hits, and the selected Covenanters gain the keyword Ophite for the remainder of the game. I don't know what Ophite does. I think it gives them a certain, obviously it has something to do with snakes. Probably some preferred movement to terrain. This is the Russians. Yeah. The Russians just go whatever, a full pagan. Don't know really how that works for them. Shaman, they're led by Rasputin. Of course, Rasputin has become a stock villain character in modernist things. They forget that he was actually an Orthodox monk, but maybe not a good one. Cossacks, you got your conscripts, of course, because what are Russians without huge hordes of conscripts. Siberian hunters. And there's special items. This is basically your war gear. You give them an ash branch or an elm branch, and it gives them protection against ones with certain effects. And these are generally based on supposedly real effects of these different types of wood. It's cool. I like this stuff. This is well done. The toadstone ring. Within the head of a toad is a precious gem, one that can protect the body from any contagion or poison. The bearer is immune to critical hits generated by units with the keyword ophyte. So I guess that's what ophyte means. It probably have venomous attacks like snakes. Take an elephant gun. Carrier pigeons. Again, very well themed. Swagger 6 stopwatch. Nice. Okay. And then faction specific items. Yeah. Then there's several scenarios in the back. Engagement. Trench raid. No Man's Land recovery. Defense of a emplacement. Big push. Ooh, a general advance. And then a special gas scenario. Gas, which is actually not, there's a witch gas seeping over from another dimension that corrodes metal and makes bullets misfire and stuff like that, making it into a proverbial knife fight. There is a weapons table in the back. Gives a quick reference, but as I said, no index for, which would be very helpful in a complex game like this. Here's some templates. There are 3-inch, 4-inch, and 6-inch templates. And this is a B4 cone of fire for, I guess, for a Flammenwerfer machine gun. And that's the end of the book. All right, so that's a War Transformed. As I said there, I hope I gave you enough highlights and lowlights to decide whether this is the kind of thing that you want to invest in. I think it has a lot of potential. The setting is certainly very evocative. With some reservations that I have, which I won't go over again, but you've watched the video at this point, so let me know your thoughts on this game. If you played it, if you're going to play, if you're interested, if there's any other games like this. What kind of miniatures you'd use for this. Let me know if you've done other Weird War, World War I games before, and what they are, or your thoughts on Osprey games in particular in the comments. Also, let me know if there's anything in particular that I missed and that you want me to cover in more detail. But hope you enjoyed this. I hope it has helped you decide whether or not you want to pick up this game. If you like the video, give it a like. Please subscribe. We're still a small channel, but most of our viewers are not subscribers. So tell your friends about it. Consider joining our Guild It or joining my locals. And thanks again for watching. Guys, have a good day. God bless you. Attention Span Labs signing off.